Father Darius is here visiting with us for 10 days, which end this coming Wednesday from the Diocese of Łódź in Poland. But if you saw how that's spelt, you would never believe that's how it's pronounced. But he's illustrating the gospel today because he said, "Oh, can I celebrate a Mass with you?" I said, "Oh no, come up higher. You can be the celebrant. I'll be happy to be the concelebrant, but if you don't mind, then I'll preach." He was very happy to leave that task to me. I know how he feels whenever I have to celebrate Mass in Spanish. I'm happy if somebody else would preach for me. But welcome, Father Darius. We hope you have enjoyed your time among us. With your baritone voice and Polish accent, you remind us of our late Pope John Paul II when he was among us here in the United States. So thank you for being here. This gospel passage today from St. Luke, that physician from Antioch in Syria, at times a companion with St. Paul on some of his missionary journeys, tells us in the opening lines of his gospel that it's his enterprise to try to re-examine all the traditions he is aware of concerning the life, the death, the resurrection of Jesus, and then set those down in an orderly manner so that they might be more readily understandable to those who would follow, people like ourselves here in this church this morning. But St. Luke not only set about to record the facts, he also searched out the meaning and the purpose of the coming of Christ among us. And so he identifies a theme that seems to underlie all the preaching and healing ministry of Jesus, one that has been called the Great Reversal. This reversal is evident in the proclamation of praise that Luke attributes to the Virgin Mary in his first chapter, when in that prose we have come to commonly know as the Magnificat, we hear Mary extol the glory of God, who in her Son Jesus Christ has come to lift up the lowly as he casts down the mighty from their thrones. Indeed, sending his only Son, not to the halls of power in Rome or even Jerusalem in that day, but rather to those humble rural villages of Galilee, not to rub elbows with the influential and powerful, but with those who were of no account whatsoever in the social, economic, and political hierarchies of that day. So then, while it might be a bit unsettling as we think about it, it should not be surprising to see that that theme of the Great Reversal is running through this particular page of St. Luke's Gospel that we have heard proclaimed here this morning. We should recognize a familiar this for that social contract operating in those days as they do in our very own. And we know it well. Indeed, if someone invites you, then you feel an obligation to return the favor and invite them. And so the cycle begins and continues on. But at the same time, those who are neither invited nor capable of inviting in turn are left out of that social loop altogether. Thus, they become the marginalized, those pushed to the side of society's mainstream. Why? Often, sadly, because they're economically poor or physically or mentally unwell or disabled. Yet Luke is inviting us to imagine that there is a far more plentiful, enduring, and most prestigious banquet to which all of us would desire to be invited. It is the banquet in the kingdom of God, the wedding feast of the Lamb. Luke, out of compassion and concern for us, is clearly trying to tell us that God, in his goodness, who provides a home for the poor, provides that banquet primarily for them who are left out of most of the gatherings and deprived of many of the good things that some of us enjoy in this world. And it is they who will play a part in deciding who will be eligible to share in that banquet's joy with them. So the gospel is challenging each of us to ask ourselves, how kind, how compassionate are we to the poor and the marginalized among us in our day, such that they would gratefully desire to return the favor of that kindness to us one day. Certainly, we have many opportunities through the charitable works of our own community of faith to be kind to the poor. Our charities are funded by those donations we make to Matthew 25. These support our weekly food pantry. These enable us as a community of faith to try to assist those who can't afford some of the basic necessities for a minimally decent life, such as housing or utilities or transportation. Every year in our Lenten almsgiving, and we heard in our first reading, alms are a way to make up for sin. We as a parish support many initiatives throughout the world organized by Catholic Relief Services, or those by Food for the Poor in the village of El Tablan outside Guatemala City, where in cooperation with just one other parish in Maryland, our parish of Christ the King has already replaced so many tin shacks with mud floors with sturdier cinder block houses that provide the poorest of the poor protection from the elements, and now for over 100 families thus far. So each of us might ask, to what extent are we part of this charity toward those in need, or other efforts that we might make through other channels? And how happily and generously do we do so? Let us appreciate that indifference to the plight of the poor will in the end not be judged all that differently from belittling or overly loathing those who cannot make it on their own. Sadly, an attitude that is easily detected sometimes as we listen to talk shows on the airwaves. But let us never fall into that sort of resentment of the poor, but rather see ourselves in our own security, not as, here because of our own doing, or fortunate while others are not, or blessed while others are cursed, but rather regard ourselves properly as the mere stewards of the resources with which we have been blessed to enjoy, the excess of which are not meant only to add to our own comforts, but are there at our disposal to share with those who suffer greatly as they have to go without what they truly need. Indeed, let us be grateful then for this wisdom of St. Luke, who is advising us to treasure the poor among us as God does, such that we would try to attend to their needs as if they are those capable of bestowing the greatest and most enduring of all legacies upon us. And we will treasure them if we face that challenging truth that our invitation to one day enjoy the good things of God in His kingdom forever may depend largely on the poor, who because of our kindness to them while they suffered in this life will vouch for our worthiness to be included in the kingdom's banquet forever.